Hey everybody, it's Mike from The Art of Guitar here. This is going to be sort of a special video by request. I had a fellow guitar player who also did Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I guess he watched one of my videos and I had mentioned that I'm a practitioner. And he was wondering if I could do a video on protecting your hands and your wrists. Because if you don't know Jiu Jitsu, it's pretty intense on your hands and fingers. If you ever look at someone who's been a practitioner for a long time and does a lot of certain moves like guards like spider guard, anytime you have to grab the sleeves or the collar or the pants or anything, you put a lot of pressure on your fingers. And some people have really gnarly looking fingers. Luckily mine aren't that bad. But I had a friend whose knuckles got pretty big and he can't even put on his wedding ring anymore, or he can't take it off. I forgot which one it is. But so I didn't want that to happen. So I've always been a little bit worried about that. Early on, I might have been a lot more cautious because I didn't have very good technique and I didn't know what to expect. Like I'd be in a certain move or a certain position and I would do a certain move and the other guy would move a certain way I wasn't expecting. It happened many times where I'm like, oh, that was a really close call. Luckily, I've never had a finger, pop out of joint or anything like that. I've had a few close calls, but I wanted to share with you the couple of things that I've been able to implement that could possibly prevent some problems with your hands or wrists. The first thing I tell people is make sure you do some form of stretches and as your warm-up, because we have some exercises that do this in jiu-jitsu, but for guitar I teach the finger yoga, where you place your fingers together and do this. Kind of opens up your palm a little bit. And then of course this classic move, working your wrists a little bit. Doing the finger splits on the leg is actually one of my favorite things to do, and that just seems to keep your fingers strong, the connecting tissues and all that in your fingers strong. You can use certain things. I have a right here next to my bed. I've got this thing called a riff grip, a finger master. When I was younger, it was called a riff grip, or a finger, what was it called? A riff master, I think, when I was a kid. But that's another thing. You could do little exercises with that. I don't really use this too much. My girlfriend got it for me for Christmas, so I should have said that. But I have used it before, and I will start using it again, I promise. Doing some form of yoga is excellent for your hands, and especially for your wrists and strengthening. You can't tell from me because I have skinny forearms, but they're actually pretty strong. Whenever I've done arm wrestling contests, I've actually done pretty well. And I think it's because my forearms are pretty long, but since they're skinny, I was always afraid that they would get easily injured. But that hasn't happened very much. I've had one wrist injury, and that was because a white belt went a little freaky and spazzed out. And I'm going to explain what happened in a little bit because I want to put all the situations together back to back so that you can learn from them. So don't forget, yoga is really good because you can do a lot of downward dog where you have to support your body weight on your hands and your wrists. And if you do have weak wrists and they're susceptible to being injured, yoga will definitely strengthen those little connecting tissues or muscles. I don't use tape or anything either. The only time I ever do is if I have some mat burn on my fingers or something like that, or if I did happen to kind of maybe sprain something a little bit and I feel like my pinky is just kind of sticking out funny, maybe I'll tape it to my ring finger just to kind of give it some reinforcement. But I've really never taped my fingers. Maybe I should, I don't know. Been doing this for about 10 years now and have never had to really tape my fingers for any real reason other than to try to look like a badass on the mats, but that doesn't really help too much for me. Anyways, let's get right to the situations when I feel like your fingers or your wrists can be in danger, and hopefully you can avoid them, or when you do get in those situations, you can just be cautious and know which way to move and what to expect. I've got my grappling dummy here. It's something I invested in about 5 years ago. It's helped me a lot. But anyways, here's a situation that can happen. If you ever get on side control, and I don't know if you can see it very well from this angle. There's my grappling dummy Zandy. Anytime you get, let me get this arm out of the way, an underhook on somebody like this, be very careful because we tend to do this with our hand, and sometimes that's good to do because you want to base out and keep them from being able to move. But be very aware that at any moment someone could lock down your arm and then basically push you right over the top of your hand. And I've had people completely bridge over and my hand was like this, so my fingers ended up doing sort of a bend like that, and that was really scary. I don't know how I avoided injury. We just went over really fast and right away I'm just like, whoa, and I looked at my hand and luckily everything was still there. So what I do now is as soon as I establish my base, I turn my hand around and I actually will grab some fabric, if I can grab any here, like this, and hold it tight. Or I'll grab a collar, which is nice if it's ever available, and it's actually a pretty tight hold. You know, sometimes if they start to push you a little bit, you have to kind of base out a little bit, but for the most part I keep my hand like this. Then if we roll over, your hand's already going the correct direction so that you'll be okay. Remember, this is a warning sign. If you're underhooking somebody and you can see your hand laying flat like that, they might do the old bridge and roll, so be really careful right there. Okay everyone, here's another situation that can happen. Usually when they're demonstrating and we're practicing a move, we'll have to grab the collar, right? So one thing that I like to try to do is instead of grabbing a collar like this with my thumb inside, I try to sometimes bring my thumb to the same side that I'm gripping. That seems to help a lot, because sometimes when you grab like this really tight, they will grab your fist and pull their body back and it'll rip your hand off. And if you do this, it's really hard on your fingers. Sometimes they really yank hard. That's a really tough thing for your thumb. So sometimes I'll grab like this and I'll actually bring my thumb out like that. You might think it's a little bit weaker, but if you're just trying to hold on for dear life anyway, it's probably not good to just hold and struggle forever like this anyway. If they're really insistent on yanking your hand off, they're going to do it, usually on me at least. So I bring my thumb out to the same side as my fingers. And then if they pull, the worst that can happen is I open my hand and everything comes out clean, because you're always looking to come out clean. You don't want to get anything caught. That being said, same thing with any kind of collar, sleeve type thing. Let's say he has a sleeve right here that I want to grab. Well, I used to grab like this a lot, which is I guess illegal in some tournaments, but my fingers would go inside and I would think I've got a tough grip right here. But what can happen is if they start doing circles, your fingers get caught in there and all of a sudden your fingers are getting twisted. So you guys probably know this, but the pistol grip is huge if you can get this kind of a grip. You notice it's sort of similar to what I was doing on the collar with my thumb being safe here. My thumb is not inside doing this. That's terrible. You can already feel that something bad can happen. You sort of get the sensitivity where you can forecast danger. For me, after 5 years. So anyways, this is the pistol grip variation. And yes, I still do the classic, grip like that. That's a very popular grip where your fingers go in and it's very strong. It's really surprising. Even with just this, like the cuff grip, I guess I would call it, that's very powerful. Of course, people can pull back, but the same concept. No thumb on the inside, okay? And another thing too is don't just grab a little bit of it. That's the worst. That feels terrible on your fingers. If you can grab quite a bit of fabric, create a nice little bit of cloth right there, this feels very strong. And of course, if they pull really hard, you can just let it go like that. That's good. It's not as great on your hand as a pistol grip is, because that just slips out the back like that. But it's a little more secure. Okay guys, this isn't the most pleasant view of my grappling dummy, but this does happen. Let's say you're doing some kind of footlock war. You know how easy that is to all of a sudden want to grab some kind of a pant leg, some kind of a pant cuff. I'm not going to put myself in position right now, but this is what happens. If they're standing above you, this happens too. You just want to get a grip on their pants so that you can flip them over. This could also happen in close guard when you're trying to do any kind of flower sweep. But it's easy to grab underneath like that and try to hold on. Once again, that's a bad idea. People are really good at taking their feet and like whipping them in circles to get out of things. And if your fingers get caught in there, lots of twisting can happen, okay? You can do the pistol grip. A little bit easier on the pants because there's usually more slack, so that's a good way to go. I have done this before, and it kind of scares me a little bit, but at least my thumb is on the protected side in this case. Do not let it slip on the inside. So that's for the pant leg. I only bring that up because it's very common to reach underneath because it seems like an obvious grip like that. Okay, and for the one time I did injure my wrist, thank God it was only one time. It was a situation where I had somebody in my close guard and I was posting up, so I was laying back and it came up to do the hip bump sweep. So you know how you post on your hand like this, that's kind of a typical thing in Jiu Jitsu. Well, the white belt I was going against basically pushed back into me as fast as he could, and my wrist bent this way. It was really bad. I just felt a crunch. And I was just like, whoa, hang on a second. And I shook it off, and it felt like for a second it was pushed out of joint a little bit, like it just popped out or something. And so this is another danger sign right here. if your hand is facing backwards. You know, I don't recommend doing this or anything strange like that, but just be aware when you're in this position, no matter what. If you're sitting up and you're even putting your arm forward to hold a collar, you don't want them to push into you easily because this stuff will happen. It's a bad situation. So be ready at any moment to let it go and just go to your elbow, or just let go completely and just go to your back, okay? Just be really aware whenever you get in this situation that bad things can happen. And that happened about 3 years ago, and I still to this day have wrist tweaking issues. If you're ever in class and you're just kind of hanging out, which sometimes you're just talking to somebody and there's people sparring behind you, never put your arm down and do this. This is one thing that freaks me out. Every time I see someone do this, I say something. And sometimes I accidentally do it myself, and I'm like, whoa, what am I doing? Because look what you're doing. You're basically creating this really terrible situation where you just be talking like this. Suddenly somebody rolls into your elbow. Could you imagine that feeling? Basically an arm bar, breaking your arm the wrong way. So if you're going to sit and talk to people on the mats, be aware that you're basically creating this kickstand effect with your arm, and it's not going to bend in your favor. So just be like this. Just remember, the ground is lava, just like hot lava. Whenever you're in closed guard, you don't want to be touching the ground. Don't be touching the ground when you're talking to your friends. This is a no-no, okay? Okay, I can't forget about the element of striking and just general reaching out to people with your hands and fingers. I do striking half the time. So when it comes to fighting and punching, sometimes it's a habit of people. They watch Bruce Lee, he does a lot of open hand stuff when he's about to fight, but just before he punches, he'll make a fist. I try not to do that anymore because there's been a few close calls where I almost stubbed my finger on somebody's leg. Let's say they're kicking and I go to block, or I go to actually punch at the same time, where your fingers are very susceptible to just getting hit in this direction, so stubbing your fingers. And could you imagine how bad that would hurt if you're going full force forward and they are too, even if they're punching and you're punching and your hands are open and theirs is closed. Or let's say you do hit them, you could poke their eye, you could hit their skull and bend your fingers the wrong way. A lot of bad things can happen if you have any open hand type stuff going on. So my recommendation is when you spar, make it a conscious effort to keep a tight fist. It might feel kind of strange fighting all the time with clenched fists. You know, you want to be relaxed sometimes when your fingers open up. But even if they're open a little bit and someone kicks and you go to block, let's say, or you just go to, you know, open your hand up a little bit to parry or something, this stuff is all susceptible if they happen to go a little bit higher than you expected. So keeping really tight fists is very important. You might have to bring your hand a little bit higher to block, but your fingers aren't going to block anyway if they're open. So just keep that in mind. So clenched fists when you fight, and none of this stuff, okay? Okay, and the last thing I should talk about are wrist locks. We don't do too many of them where I train, but there was this one guy this one time where he had an arm bar on me and I was holding on for dear life. He just basically reached up and he pulled my wrist as hard as he could. It's kind of a jerk move, actually. I was kind of mad at him because he did it so hard and so fast. You know, with wrist locks, they have to do that sometimes because it's easy to resist them or to just kind of yank out of them. So he put it on really fast. And maybe that's also why this wrist is still kind of messed up. But I tapped, but it wasn't until I heard a little bit of a cracking sound. That's, you know, wasn't a good thing. So be careful for wrist locks. If anyone ever gets you in a wrist lock, whether it's this direction, or even like a sideways direction, which could be really bad, especially this way. Be very aware and tap right away if they have it locked in, okay? Even if they don't, you feel like it's coming on, kind of like a heel hook, you're going to want to get out of that as soon as possible. As you know, without our wrists, we can't support our hands. Without our hands, we can't support our fingers, and it's just a chain reaction right here. You know, I've played with sore elbows before, sore shoulders, but the wrist thing kind of messed me up a little bit. Luckily, it was I'm still able to strum using my rotation technique. But I've been pretty fortunate, I'd have to say, as far as fingers and hands and wrists for almost a decade of jiu-jitsu for nothing terrible to happen. But a big part of that, I believe, is just experience, knowledge, knowing when things could go wrong, as well as doing all the preventative stuff like yoga and the finger yoga as well, and any kind of conditioning I can do for my fingers to make them stronger. So hopefully that helps all you guitar players out there that do jiu-jitsu as well. And yeah, let me know. Leave me some comments if you have any other suggestions or things that you do, and I'd like to learn from you. Okay, thanks.